everyone. I will be reading on the down low. I will be reading as many chapters as I can in the amount of time that I have. So, without further ado, let's get the reading. And I do have a snack, some coconut, coconut, coconut rolls. These are quite delicious. And while I'm reading this book, I wanted y'all to know that I do have a book club discussion coming up soon. So I'm gonna try to really focus in and get what is needed to be read. Let's see what happens. And just to let y'all know, I am on chapter 2. Actually, I'm on chapter 3. And this is the bookmark that I have. Chapter 3. Was my marriage a lie? I walked to the door of my house as I had done every day since we brought the beautiful fixer upper in one of the most prestigious black neighborhoods in our town. I was feeling really good as I put the key in the door, looking forward to enjoying a quiet evening with my wife and our 2 children. The key, however, wasn't working. I tried it several times and it wouldn't budge. Finally, I had to ring the doorbell. My brother in law, my wife's youngest brother, opened it hard. You better get your beepers out of here before I beep you up, he yelled. What? My heart started beating fast, and I broke into an instant sweat as I stood on the front porch of my own house with my brother in law inches from my face. One of my best friends, who lived across the street, had come out of his house to get rid of the trash. He waved and yelled out, What's up, man? But I didn't pay him any attention. I was trying to figure out what was going on at my house. I then started to think about the lady who lived next door. She was a member of the church my mother attended. Miss Odell was like the character Pearl from the 1980s situation comedy 227, the one who would hang out the window to get in everybody's business. My wife and I would laugh about how she probably looked through her bedroom window at each at us each night, checking our every move. So I just knew she caught the showdown between my brother in law and me and was probably on the phone calling, I'm sorry, and was probably on the phone calling my mother or other folks in the church At that very moment, my brother in law continued to block my path, but I looked around into the kitchen where I saw my sisters in law huddled huddled around my wife, who was crying. John continued to block me out, and I was getting angrier and angrier. I never liked him anyway. He was my least favorite of my five brother in laws. Now he was standing in my doorway, controlling my house, and that pissed me off more than anything, more than having to leave, which is what I ended up doing. My mind was racing during the 5-minute drive to my parents' house. Where else was I going to go? I was trying to retract my day. What had happened between leaving that morning from work with a kiss from my wife and kids and coming home that evening that was so dramatically altered my life? That dramatically altered my life. Of course, I knew exactly what I had done that day, but how in the world did Brenda find out? How could she possibly know? Instead of going to my class, as I had told my wife I was doing every afternoon, I went to Marvin Gregory's house. Mel- Melvin. Melvin was a older man I met in church who took me under his wing. When Brenda and I moved back to our hometown after being overseas and in Texas, he seemed to seek me out. He asked me to help him with a men's mentoring program he was starting at the church. I was happy to do it. I never had a tight relationship with my father, who was an excellent provider, but he didn't really have much conversation or emotional support for me. So meeting Brother Gregory gave me an opportunity to hang out with an older father figure type and perhaps get some parent, parental love. I was so I was also flattered that he wanted me to help him with his mentoring project. One Sunday after church, I rode to his house on my bicycle to discuss the men's ministry. We lived in a small town. Everything seemed particularly within walking distance. Why waste the gas? I thought. And the bike was also a good way for me to get some exercise. I parked my bike in his backyard and went inside, and he offered me a drink. It was a hot summer day, and I expected water and lemonade. Instead, Melvin pulled out a bottle of E&J, a cheap brandy. We walked for a while, and before I knew it, we had finished half the bottle. We talked a little about the church mentoring program, but by the way Melvin was looking at me, I could tell he might have another kind of mentoring in mind. Do you like videos? He asked me. I told him I did. Why don't you come upstairs? He said. There are some videos I want to show you. His videos were of men having sex. At this point, I am E and Jade out and feeling it. I was just going with the flow. I was a little shocked, but I was also getting very turned on. I was high on his bed watching a video of men having sex. I was starting to get aroused, and before I even noticed, Melvin had slid beside me and started lightly kissing my neck and making me even more aroused. I did not resist. He took it further and began to undress me. I still did not resist. As he started kissing my chest and rubbing my erection, he took off his clothes and we began to have sex. No words were exchanged. Afterward, I slept off my high, both thighs, both highs, and left. Melvin had awakened something in me that I thought would never take bloom. As long as I could remember, I had had some attraction to men, but I never acted on it before this day. Before, but after that day, I had a desire to look, to see Melvin every chance I could. I was opened, hooked. It was like a drug that I could not get rid of. The more he gave me, the more I wanted. Melvin was satisfying my sexual desire, touching me in ways I had never been touched before, and anticipating what I wanted even before I knew myself. It was like being with a mind blowing mind reader. Could you imagine having someone fulfill sexual desires you didn't even know you had? Melvin was perfect for me. He lived nearby. My wife liked him. He was respected in the community. He lived alone and he had a high sex drive. I liked the way Melvin made me feel. He was an elegant man. He was a cool older brother who loved Billie Holiday and Elaine Frangester. His home had a spiral staircase and a fireplace. Going to his house was what I lived for. There was liquor, music, and a strong desire for my body. Being with him was an escape to a world I didn't think existed. Even though things were perfect at home, being with Melvin completed everything. I had a great job and a family, and now I had someone I could let my guard down with and totally be myself. I could allow those desires and feelings that I had for so long tried to bury and kill come out and breathe. I knew those feelings of wanting to be with another brother were not dead. They were just asleep. They were not gone, but on vacation. They were simply locked away. Melvin found the key, and I allowed him to unlock that door. Looking back, I don't know if I would ever have approached him, but he must have seen something in my eyes. He must have noticed the way I looked at him. I know he felt when we were watching videos that it would be okay for him to continue. I'm sure my body was telling him to make his move. Melvin was a pro. He had his PhD in DL behavior. Compared with him, I was still in grade school. He was divorced and he had a string of lady friends on the side, but he had years of experience in the DL life. He knew to take his time with me. No, he didn't waste any time making the initial move, but when he actually got down to business, Melvin was slow and steady. I just followed his lead. We didn't just have sex. Melvin was turning out to be a good friend. He listened to me. I was able to talk with him about things, and he seemed to have all the answers, and he knew when to be quiet. He knew I was confused about my sexual desires, but he never once talked about my family, and we never discussed what we were doing. We did what we did sexually with few words. Not one time did we talk about what we were doing as being gay or homosexual. In fact, we never even talked about safe or safer sex. We never used protection. Never. He schooled me in the fine art of having sex with a man, but he never taught me how to be safe or how to be on the DL and not get caught. Several months into my involvement with Melvin, I started getting really comfortable and sloppy and cocky. It was easy to be cocky when things were going so perfectly in my world. I had a perfect wife who was also a perfect mother. She didn't miss a beat in supporting me emotionally and was there for me in every way a woman can. The deeper I got with Melvin and more I started to neglect Brenda, I became distant. Our sex was different, scranned. She wondered why I wasn't as affectionate as I used to be, and why I wasn't making love to her as frequently. When I told her I was stressed with work and school and still adjusting to civilian life in my hometown, she understood. She didn't pressure me. When she wondered why I spent so much time away from home, I explained that being back in town, I had so many people to catch up with. My folks, my friends from high school, and she understood. She knew that I was in school and I worked hard. I took her kindness and understanding as an opportunity to do whatever I wanted. That was one of my many mistakes I made. The first one was sleeping with Melvin. In the beginning, I would never park my car in his driveway or anywhere near his house because his driveway and house were too open and exposed. I would park down the street, walk to his place, and ride my bike and keep it in the back. But after I got caught up in Melvin's world and my own arrogance, I stopped thinking about who might ride by and see my car. I started parking right in front of his door, a big no. That that's where my car was the day Brenda caught me. My car was there all afternoon. It was also there all afternoon the day before. When one of Brenda's friends spotted it, I later found out and called her. I was supposed to be in class both days. When I got home the evening of the day Brenda's friend saw my car at Melvin's, Brenda asked me how class was. Baby, it was a tough day, I told her. The professor was on me all class. I was bust in a lie, but Brenda never let on that she knew I was lying. Instead, she went into detective mode. She went through my wallet that night and found a picture of Melvin. I had stupidly begged him for a photo. Another big no. She was now suspicious enough to see for herself where I was actually going every afternoon instead of class. The next day, I went to Melvin's as I was doing for months. I had long I had long since dropped my class. Sometime during my visit to Melvin's, Brenda drove over. I was boldly parked in the driveway because I had not planned on staying long. At least that's what I'd told myself. I walked up the steps and called to Melvin as I opened his front door. In our small town, it was not usual for people to leave their doors unlocked. As I went in, I didn't even think about locking the door. After I went in, I went up to the bedroom, which faced the stairs. Before I reached the top, I could see Melvin lying naked across the queen size bed, waiting for me. He smelled good, and he was ready to get into a little something. There was no liquor this day, but plenty of foreplay, Melvin's specialty. I didn't think it was possible for a person to be so gentle and smooth, yet so intense and strong, just as strong as the music blaring from the sound system, a wild jazz beat that seemed page turn to keep time with what we were doing in the room. It was almost primal. I was in another world, lost. We were both so caught up in what we were doing that neither of us noticed that someone had come in the front door. Neither of us heard the footsteps on the stairs leading to the bedroom, nor did we hear those same footsteps rush back out. That day, we had an unaccepted audience, unexpected audience that would cost me my marriage and the life I dearly loved. Brenda had to see for herself what her friend had reported. She saw my car, my raggedy gold cutlass, in front of Melvin's house. She came to the front door. Maybe she knocked. The music was loud. It could be heard from the street, and it would have been impossible to hear a knock. She knew I was inside, so maybe she tried to knock and found the front door open. She must have found the sound of the music, followed, followed the sound of the music, which led her upstairs. With the music and the mood going, Brenda probably got an eyeful more than enough evidence, more than enough to know that Melvin and I weren't just talking about a mentoring program. When she got home, she called her sisters and her brothers, and they all came to her rescue. While I was at Melvin's, thinking that all was well at home, my wife was pulling in her family to protect her from me. Her husband, this man who had just found out, this man who she had just found out was a stranger to her. This person whom she had been married to for 7 years. Her first lover, her high school sweetheart, her prom date, the first man whom her father allowed her to be in a serious relationship with, the father of her children, the man who trusted, the man she trusted with her life, the man who promised to grow old with her. Now all that was a lie. Her marriage was a lie, and had to she had been living all those years with a stranger. As I said, after the showdown with John, I got in my car and headed to my parents' house. I thought about going back to Melvin's, but knew that would not be a smart move. In fact, I would never go to Melvin's again. So, mom's it was. I had nobody else to talk to get advice from, no place to hide until this thing blew over. I really thought it would blow over. In my twisted mind, I was still the man Brenda loved. And while I wasn't perfect, I thought she would take me back. Whatever was going on, it couldn't stamp out our love. I decided to go to my parents until she came to her senses. I would go there and act like nothing was wrong. As I got closer to the house I grew up in, tears started flowing. I cried so hard I wasn't sure I would ever stop. Deep inside, I knew that I had messed up and that it was, page turn, serious. When I pulled up in front of my parents' house, I noticed that they were not sitting on the front porch as they did every evening before they went to bed. I wiped my eyes and tried to pull myself together before I went into the house. I was an emotional wreck. I had always been emotional, especially when I talked to my mom about issues that bothered me. She was always baby me and look, she would always baby me and look at me with eyes that saw straight through me with understanding. She had that way about her, and she always knew I was really feeling, and she always knew how I was really feeling. When I got inside the house, I discovered that my parents were upstairs in their respective bedrooms. My mom and dad hadn't slept in the same room for years. My dad had taken over the room once shared by my brother and me, while my mom had the master bedroom across the hall. When I got to the top of the stairs, I saw my dad sitting on his bed with his head in his hands. He had been crying and shaking his head back and forth, saying something under his breath that I couldn't quite make out. I headed straight for my mother's room. She was lying on her bed, crying. She had gotten off the phone with Brenda, who told her our marriage was a lie. She told my mother she was filing for divorce and wanted custody of the kids. Divorce? That was not even in my parents' vocabulary. They were confused, but they knew that my life was about to change and they were afraid. For my father, it was about the reputation of the family and his reputation in the church. You have embarrassed the family, he said to me. How did you do this? People are going to talk about us. Am I the How am I going to face my church? Why did you do this? He didn't want to hear anything from me. And as far as he was concerned, I had ruined the family name. As in a small town, news travels fast, especially news like Jimmy King is a beep. That would be on the front page. The first, the perfect King family was a black mark. Yeah, that was, that son, Dinkin, and Mrs. King bragged so much about who never got in trouble, who had served his country, got married, and raised and was raising a beautiful family, brought a house, and was now going back to school. That son is a beep. The one who the one who could do no wrong had fallen from grace. That's the way the story would go. I sat on the edge of my mother's bed, laid my head on her chest, and started crying again. This time, the cry came from another place. It was a cry I can't explain. I wasn't crying because I had done this thing and ruined my family. I was crying because I had gotten caught. As each tear fell, I was plotting how I would make it all right and undo the damage. I was going to get out of this and get things back to normal. Even in the middle of this emotional roller coaster, my spirit was not defeated. I was going to return to my home and family. It was all about me. I was not worried about my children. They were young, and this would not impact them yet. I thought I was in the now mode. I had to regroup and do so quickly. I moved in with my parents, one of the hardest things to do. I had not lived with them since high school, and I had grown accustomed to having my freedom. Now I was back in my old room, moving my dad back in with my mother and under constant watch. I, I went into a deep depression. I stopped eating and couldn't sleep. My mother was concerned about my health, both physically and mentally. I missed my children. I missed my wife. I also missed my life. Brenda wouldn't let me talk to my kids, let alone talk to her. When I called, one of her sisters would always answer the phone. If Brenda ever did pick up and hear it was me, there was no conversation. She would say, I want to end this marriage and hangs up and hang up. I used to drive by my house to try to get a glimpse of my children or Brenda. I never saw them. Brenda had sent the children to stay with one of her sisters for safekeeping. This was hurting me only. This was hurting not only me, but my parents, who did nothing to deserve being locked out of their grandchildren's lives. Before this, my mother talked to and saw her grandchildren every day. My children spent many times with my parents than they did with Brenda and me. I could see the hurt on my mother's face and not being able to see her babies. I had to do something to get my family back together. I decided I would woo Brenda as I did when we first started dating. I would be more in touch with her feelings and sensitivity since to everything she was going through. I stopped thinking about me, and I definitely wasn't thinking about Melvin. All those feelings and desires were dead. I even refused to drive down the street where he lived, and I stopped going to the church I had attended with my wife. I just sat in my room thinking about what I had done to myself and to my family. After several weeks, Brenda began to soften a bit. She started talking to me, but would always end our conversations with the same request to dissolve the marriage. She wanted me to admit that I was unfaithful and that the marriage was a 7-year lie. She told me that if I did that, she would not expose me further. I refused to accept her offer. I didn't want to lose her. I planned on fighting for my marriage. I was determined that she would take me back. And during those weeks apart, after my grieving ended, I had somehow convinced myself that Brenda was wrong for trying to tear up our marriage. How could she do this to our children? I was not going away without a fight. Brenda stood firm, through, and refused to bend. My mother tried to talk to her. That didn't work. We went to our pastor for guidance. and he told her to stand by her man. That didn't work. I sent her a dozen roses. That didn't work. When we were together, I tried to make love to her. That definitely didn't work. She was through with me, and she had the complete support of her family to keep her strong because she was the baby of a large family. Every one of her siblings ra- railed, rallied, rallied around to protect her like a solid wall to keep me from her. The tension between my family and her family was so thick, I thought it might turn into an all out family feud. Even with the rumors about what I did, I managed to convince my family that Brenda's family was standing in the way of our reconcile. One second, you guys. We are back. Even with the rumors about what I did, I managed to convince my family that Brenda's family was standing in the way of our reconciling. They were the ones keeping us from the children. They were the ones hurting us. Brenda's family had the upper hand. They had my children, my house, my possessions. Finally, 3 months after the incident, di- sorry, divorce papers were served to me. I had to face the reality. We were not getting back together. I was only 27 years old, and I was going to be the first person in my family to get a divorce. I, it was a dark time in my life and the life of my family. During this same period, I got laid off from my job and was about on the brink of losing the house. Brenda wanted to keep it, but she could not afford to pay the mortgage. I was not working and couldn't afford the payments and the temporary child support I was ordered to pay. I still had not had any time with my children, which was killing me. Brenda felt that I was not man enough to be a father to my children and that they needed a real man to be there for them. She told me they needed her brothers, not me. We ended up losing the house, the dream house, the house that everyone was so proud of, the house that set us apart from all our high school friends. That house was the main gathering place for both of our families. Now I would never set foot in it again. Brenda's brothers dropped off my personal possessions at my parents' house. The divorce took about 6 months to finalize. During that time, I moved out of my parents' house, started dating other women, and discovered Columbus, Ohio's capital and largest city. It was about an hour from my hometown, and there I discovered a new world. Brothers. There could meet many sexual needs for men. Brothers there could meet my sexual needs for men, and I could do what I wanted away from my family, my ex wife, and anybody else who may know me. I had found a new networking opportunity that helped me develop my DL skills even more. Brenda made the right choice by not taking me back. It was only a matter of time before I was back on the prowl, exploring my sexual desires for men. Chapter 4. She can't compete with him. I'm going to give it to him the way he wants it. I'm going to give him something he'll never forget. I heard women say this all the time. They felt that if they do their job properly in the bedroom, their man will have no reason to stray. However, if your man sleeps with men, there is nothing sexual you can do that will make him stop. You can't perform oral sex on your man or allow him to hit it from the back or anything else you may think of that will rock his world. Nothing will make a brother who likes to have sex with other brothers stop. I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. If a man enjoys sex with a man, there's not a woman alive that can compete with that desire because it's simple. She's not a man. When a man cheats on his woman with a man, it's often all about sex. The sex is different, and a woman can't duplicate it. There's where many women go wrong. They think there is something they can do, or worse, they think it's their fault that their man is sleeping with a man. I placed an ad on a website calling for men living on the DL to come together under complete confidentiality and discuss their lives and why they cheat on their women and sleep with men. Men would lie and say it's the woman's fault. Some brothers complained about their ladies being boring in bed or getting fat. They complained about women not allowing them to go in really deeply when they had sex or about the kids waking up in the middle of the night. They said they were tired of their women's complaining about the bills. Man, I just got over to my boy's home house, smoked a blunt, got my penis beeped, get my ish off, and I didn't have to hear none of that. One guy said, then I can go home and deal with her. I don't believe the reasons these men provided. In my opinion, their responses reflect the rationalizing personality of men living on the DL. They do not really readily accept responsibility for their actions. They're also searching for motivations and excuses for living this double life. These men's ladies, even with all their issues, don't have anything to do with the need to have sex with other men. I know quite a few DL brothers, including the old me before I came clean and started being honest with the people in my life who have tried to convince a woman that it is her fault. These men will talk her into believing that she actually had something to do with their fooling around with men. I recently had a conversation with a brother who had been married for several years. When I asked him why he has unprotected sex with men, he replied, I trust this man. My wife has been getting on my nerves. He said that when he's with men, it's stress free, no expectations, no love making, just sex. His his was a typical cop out. She didn't drive him to do what he was doing. Is she making you put your life at risk? Is she making you put her life at risk? I asked. He just sat there and looked straight ahead. He didn't have an answer. He was satisfied in deflecting the guilt and blame away from himself. I did the same thing with my wife. I tried to make her think she was crazy when she caught me. I tried to make all our friends think she was overreacting. I was a good father and husband. I take care of everything, and she wanted to put me through this. I would complain. I completely page turned the whole thing around to avoid taking responsibility. The bottom line is that I slept with men because that's what I liked. The same as all my down low brothers. There is something indescribable about being with a man. A man knows what he likes. So, sex with some men is like sex with a mind reader, someone who knows exactly how you like it. I've been with brothers perform oral sex on me. I've had brothers perform oral sex on me so well I almost passed out. For some men, it's better than anal sex. In the MSM world, oral sex is often preferred because it's safer than unprotected anal sex. Sex between men is about more than sex. It's also about power. Something about a man's penis says dominance. The penis represents power and control. Some little dainty looking guy who is 5 feet 5, weighing a buck 25, can be packing a 9-inch penis. That's power. And it's not even just the size. Although men seem constantly to brag about and focus on the size of their penises. Whatever the size of a man's penis, it is clear that's where the power is. You may have a really masculine man who sleeps with other men because he wants to be dominated, something he can never be as head of his household. Maybe he wants to be held by a man to feel a certain security in his physical strength that his woman cannot provide. For other men like me, it's about total dominance, raw and rough. I've heard women say, I'm going to be his best friend, or I'm going to be interested in sports, or I'm going to support his dream. Those things may make your marriage better, but none of them will stop your man who enjoys sex with men from having sex with a man. A woman who thinks she will do all those things for her man in hopes that he will give her the attention he is showing his boys is wasting her time. I met Gary during the course of my research. He told me about his experience living on the DL. He was deep in this lifestyle. He said that when he announced he was finally going to get married, all his friends who were also on the DL got nervous. He had already called the wedding off 3 times. He said that he said there were rumors that the real reason he was calling off the wedding was that he was gay. His bride to be, Ursula, had heard all the rumors but refused to believe them. Or maybe she didn't care. She was getting married. At the wedding, Gary stood proud with his groomsmen, who were all involved the night before, in what Gary described as one of the wildest bachelor parties he had ever been to. On her wedding day, Ursula stood with her bridesmaids, girlfriends from the church, and her many social clubs. She was the envy of the other women. She had something that most wanted: a successful, hardworking black man, a true man, a man who loved and cared for her. Gary was not in prison, on drugs, or gay. He couldn't be if he was standing up there marrying her, right? Ursula had a man who even loved God. When the pastor pronounced them man and wife, you could hear a pin drop in the church. Gary said, once they were married, things, though, things changed. Gary could no longer come and go as he pleased. Ursula became overprotective and insecure about his friends hanging around all the time. At first, Gary said he was okay with this. He felt it was time to move away from his DL friends and settle down and have a family. To his credit, he did try to stop. He tried to suppress his desire to be with men. He really did love Ursula. He wanted to make it work. But like every other man I know who lives on the DL, he eventually came back. And when Gary returned to that life, he said he did so hungrily than ever. What really scared, what's really scary about this thing, at least for me, one second, y'all. We're back. What's really scary? about this thing, at least for me, is that the desire to be with other men had such a strong pull that it feels like you can't resist it. It's like something overtakes you. It's insanity. I discussed this with a minister friend who describes the lust, the drive as a keen to be to being possessed. Jay, think about this, I said. When two men are in the middle of having sex, it's as if our bodies, their spirits are taken over. Think about it. When you have sex with a brother, doesn't your body go through changes and movements? Movements you could never make originally. Your face goes through those ugly changes. Your voice even changes. For those 5 minutes or those 25 minutes, you are not yourself. It's like a demonic spirit has come into both of you, and that passion is not who you are. I shared this with other brothers and asked them if they ever felt like they had were having an outer body experience while having sex with a man. Every last one of them said yes. One person told me, I never drink, but when I think about having sex with a man, I need a drink. I become a different person. When I get with a brother and I'm feeling it, I'm not the same person. I know brothers who say they cuss when they're with other men and they never curse in their everyday life. You're saying and doing things you could never imagine yourself saying and doing. And when you're through, you roll over and get up. And nine out of 10 times, you say, yo, dude, I gotta go. You're thinking to yourself, what did I just do? I tried on many occasions to stop those strong feelings. Every time I looked at my wife and children and women who loved me and all we had, I thought, what am I doing? How can I put all of this at risk by pursuing these desires? I wasn't thinking about being with brothers at that moment, but as soon as I got in the presence of a man whom I was feeling and who was feeling me, the desire came rushing back, and the women in my life and my children were not at all on my mind. I've asked all the men I've spoken with throughout the country the following question: if a pill were invented that would make them totally stop this behavior, that would completely erase any and all desire for men, would they take it? Every single one of them said yes, empathically, yes. Not one brother I talked with said he loved living this way. Not one said he loved living a double life, putting his life and job at risk. I had never heard anyone say, I love being blackballed, or I love always being on the prowl, looking for trouble, or I love getting herpes, and having to explain to my wife the blisters on my penis. No one loved having to sneak away to another county to a clinic to get a shot for gonorrhea he contracted from unprotected sex with a man. Many men got home and slept with their wives after having sex with a brother because they said they felt they feel guilty. They tell me that sometimes they feel so dirty and so guilty when they return home that they feel like they have to get clean by being intimate with their girlfriends or wives. They intensify the lovemaking to compensate for what they did an hour earlier. When you're in this down low lifestyle, you are constantly protecting your image. Down low brothers have a macho, ultra male image that borders on homophobia. When I was on the DL, I was to be careful with the kind of men I was seen with in public. They could not be remotely flamboyant or readable, easily detected by being gay. I had to watch my language and try not to slip into the kind of verbiage I use when hanging out with my DL friends. I was careful about how I dressed, and when I had lady friends over, I had to make sure that anything that would connect me to that lifestyle was well hidden. Living on the down low is like living in a fantasy world. As a result of the state of denial, one must constantly reinforce this behavior. In fact, it took me more than 20 years to get real. It took me almost 20 years to apologize to my wife for my deception. Before I started writing this book, I was asked if I ever apologized to my wife. Before that time, I couldn't do it because it would be admitting that I had done nothing wrong and that she had been right about everything she had said about me. I spent a great many of those 20 years blaming her, running and hiding from the truth. I told everyone that she was the one who ruined our perfect marriage and our perfect life. I loved her, and she wouldn't take me back. I had promised I would be more attentive to her needs and to anything, and she wouldn't hear it. She wouldn't take me back. She took my children from me. I was telling people that she wasn't there for me, that she wasn't fulfilling my needs. But that was a lie. I would have done anything to take the heat off myself. The truth is, it was all my fault. I messed up. My wife, as fine and pretty and perfect as she was not enough to make me stop having sex with men. Years after our marriage dismantled, I got a call from my ex wife out the blue. She told me she had seen Melvin in church and that they had spoken with each other for the first time in several years. Jimmy, all those years I didn't like him, didn't want to speak to him. I avoided him, Brenda said. But 2 Saturdays ago, We caught eyes, and after the service, we found each other among the congregation and stood in the middle of the church and hugged and cried. I told him, I forgive you. And he told me, I'm sorry. And I could see that he truly was sorry.
Attention everyone, the library and the help desk are now closed.
You guys, this was a wonderful reading, but unfortunately, I am going to have to part ways. So let me finish reading this last message. I told him, I forgive you. And he told me, I'm sorry. And I could see that he truly was sorry. Jimmy, it felt so good to see. Oh, it felt so good to let all those years and all that pain go. I responded by saying, uh, I got to go, baby. I'll talk to you later. And I hung up. I couldn't handle it. I wasn't ready to face my actions. It was a special moment, and she wanted to share with me, and I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to hear it. I sat at my desk, motionless, for another half an hour. Thank you all for joining me. And please write in the comment section about how you felt about this reading and what I can do to amp up my reading. I would greatly appreciate that. And this book is on the download. This is for my book club. And we'll be having a discussion tomorrow. I still have more chapters to read. This isn't the last chapter. So thank you so much. I'll be talking to you soon. And just to let you know, a good snack to take while you're reading is coconut rolls. These coconut rolls don't carry a lot of sugar, and you can find them at your local Costco. 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 I'll be seeing you all. Thank you. Feel free to hit the comment section. Thank you so much for all those that came in. I'll be reading your comments soon.